According to a new ADL report, anti-Semitic incidents in the United States continue to escalate, up 5% from last year, up 344% over the past 5 years, and up 893% over the past 10 years. Well, Jesse Rojo, director of Philos Latino, is here to break down these appalling numbers. Well, Jesse, there were 9,354 anti-Semitic incidents in the United States last year. That's the highest since ADL started recording these numbers 46 years ago. Jesse, how is this happening in the United States?
Yeah, Raj, it's very tragic to see what we've been tracking for at least the past 10 years ourselves as well, is this increase in tolerating hate, discrimination, and mistreating a particular group of people. It seems like the world has given itself permission to really foment hatred against the Jewish people, while at the same time defending the indigenous rights or the rights of everyone else but them. And is really sad to see how even our universities have become very apathetic to it, allowing our students to be exposed to such a toxic topic regarding war and conflict, which very few experts in the world that exist that understand the dynamics and the complexities behind many of this. But now our young people, as well as everyone else on social media, thinks that they can speak very strongly about the matter, but more importantly, is that they seem like the only problem. There's only one problem in the world, and that's Israel or the Jewish people. And so we're seeing that even in our society today, whether Europe or the West, it's becoming less safe to wear Jewish symbols, to walk to the synagogue on a Shabbat. I remember almost like yesterday at the start of this war between Israel and Hamas from October 7 onward, how the spokesperson of Israel said, speaking to the whole Jewish people around the world, to be an alert, to hide their Jewish symbols, something that you wouldn't even imagine would take place unless it's Nazi Germany. It's, the 1940s and so forth. So, Raj, I think it's something that we should keep noted and not take this lightly. Now is the opportunity, and now is the time to really stand by your Jewish neighbors, to really show what love for neighbor looks like to all people. And many of these Jewish neighbors that we have been here for years. I mean, I grew up in Upper Manhattan, Washington Heights. It was the Jewish people in the Heights that first received the Dominicans who migrated there in the 60s till today. So these are people that have been there for us, that are constantly giving back to the community. And now it's our turn to give back to them.
Yeah, and I think what's most disturbing about this for me personally is, when you hear of anti-Semitic incidents in the Middle East or even in Europe, it's kind of detached, it's kind of removed. But to think that this is happening in the United States, where naively, you and I have both worked with, the Jewish people in Israel for a long time, but I naively thought that this could never really manifest itself here in a large on a large scale, and the numbers just don't prove that out. Let me read you more just incredible statistics. Incidents of vandalism and assault increased significantly. Assaults increased by 21%. Vandalism increased by 20%. Anti-Semitic incidences on college campuses were up 84% from last year. So, Jesse, what's going on American college campuses?
When it comes to our young people, and speaking as a Christian, I can't deny that there's a spiritual element to this. And I think to the extent that our society has become hostile to the Judeo-Christian tradition, it also becomes hostile to the people who represent that tradition, the Jewish people and Christianity. I mean, Christianity has it really good in the West, but when we think about the Christian community in the Middle East, as well as in Africa, they're essentially living a totally different reality than we are, being persecuted daily. We just recently heard news of 51 Christians being killed again in Nigeria, the thousands of Christians that were massacred in Syria recently. So it's really a global pandemic, spiritually speaking, that we're living, and it's affecting our young people because I don't know if many ways we can just also blame ourselves as kind of abandoning the universities to the hands of people who hate God and don't want anything to know about the foundations that made this nation as great as it was and what it was. And now we've allowed external forces to fund our universities with their own, not only money, but ideology and policies regarding foreign policy. We're getting our young people getting a different perspective of what's happening in the region. And you're hearing them being rooting for Hamas, and discriminating against Jewish students, not allowing them to enter the public entryway for students to go to their classes and study freely. It's really eerie of 1942, and if we don't do something now that it's affecting our university students, I've had parents from my home church come to me and say, my child came home with a kafia over his head, and they didn't know how to respond. They didn't know, they themselves felt vulnerable and not knowing how to be able to engage with their students regarding this topic. And a lot of it has to do with just not knowing enough about what's happening. So we need to educate. We need to demand more accountability from our university leaders, the presidents, the professors that are allowing these things to take place, and our parents need to be involved. We as parents need to be more involved in the schooling of our students. So, yeah, Raj, I can't deny that there's a spiritual element
Yep.
to all of this, and
Yep.
as a result, they're going to attack the people of God.
Yep. And, I wish this was an anomaly, but we've done stories about the rise of anti-Semitism in the UK, the abhorrent rise of anti-Semitism in Australia, France, Sweden. I mean, this is a global thing. And, when it comes to the 4,000-year-old hatred of the Jewish people, I think you and I are completely in alignment that this is a spiritual thing. I think that the enemy of God hates that which God has made promises and covenants and love for. And to me, I don't think you can necessarily detach it from that. So obviously, this is a Christian audience. I guess one, why should Christians care? And then two, what can Christians actually do?
Yeah. Oh man, there are many layers to that question in reality. I think Christians should care for a number of reasons. One of them is because God's character is in line. God made Abraham a promise to him and his descendants, and God will not break that promise. In fact, Hebrew chapter 6 calls that covenant not only just a promise, but an oath. God gave his word. Imagine if between you and I, we swear to our mother because we consider our mothers very dear and valuable. How much so God, who swore under his own name to stand by his people, and as a result, I believe that so long as the Jewish people are alive and the state of Israel is alive, it'll be a testament to the world that God exists.
Come on.
That what he said 4,000 years ago was true, and he meant it. And I think history has been a testimony of that. In fact, not that long ago, the Jewish people were celebrating Purim. And what's the story of Purim, the Jewish festival? It's the story of Esther and how the Jewish people outlived Haman and his genocidal attempts to eliminate them. Now, most people point out a very interesting fact of the book of Esther is that it's one of the two books in the Bible that does not mention God at all. Right. So the purpose of it is to show us how God works behind the scenes, even when he's not perceived by human eyes. Right. But what most people don't realize is that the book of Esther also, another interesting feature is that it's the book that makes the most reference to the Jewish people than all of the other books of the Bible combined. Okay. It mentions the Jewish people like 50 something times. Right. And why do we call the First Corinthians chapter 13 the chapter of love? Because it makes 8 references to the word love, right? So when the Bible is making an emphasis, that means we should pay attention. And what is the Bible trying to teach us about the Jewish people? Well, I'll end with this, Raj. But if you remember chapter 6 of the book of Esther, Haman comes back home and he's complaining to his friends and his wife that he just had been embarrassed deeply because he was asked by the king to parade Mordecai around the people in his high horse and in the king's royal garment, right? And he thought it was him, and he was embarrassed that he was forced to do it to his enemy. And what does his wife say to him? His wife says, well, listen, if Mordecai is of the descendants of the Jewish people, before you've begun to fall, desist now, because you will finish falling before him. Right? It's telling us something very powerful about the Jewish people, that despite the Jewish people, in spite of the Jewish people, they have a covenant loving God. And he who watches over Israel does not sleep
Come
nor
on.
slumber. So my friends, what's really good about that, Raj, is that promise also applies to us as believers.
Yep.
It's like that's the same God that we believe in.
Yep.
And behind all of the politics and discussions and whatever theological debates happening about what's currently happening with Israel, that's one very fact that Christians cannot forget.
Wow.
That God made a promise to Abraham.
Come
and
on.
He will not break that promise.
Come on. Well, Jesse, I so appreciate your time, my brother. Thank you so much.
Hey, same here, buddy.